All right, sorry, I'm having some music issues on my end. I think a couple of us are using Spotify, and so it keeps kicking me out, but it's time to get started anyway, so no worries there. Thank you everybody for joining us. Again, if you haven't done so already, please check your audio, make sure that your video is on. Best practice says that, it's important for us to see one another. No judgment on this end. We know that you're working from home. It's okay if you're in your pajamas. It's okay if a spouse, our baby, our fur baby, our partner, whoever it is, comes in and out of the room. We've been doing this for a few weeks and we understand there are disruptions, but we still want to see your face, so please turn on your video. And again, if you haven't done so, make sure that your name and where you're from is in the box with one hope that you have for students. We're going to get started as long as my technology works with me today. And we're going to start by introducing ourselves, who you have on the team with you today. I'm Melissa Cappanegra. I'm the director of the Quality Schools Initiative here at City Forward Collective. And I keep saying here at as if I'm in the office, but you know what I mean. So prior to that, I was a school leadership coach for Schools That Can Milwaukee. And before that, I was a principal in Chicago. So Milwaukee has been home for 2 years now, and I'm really happy to be here, and it's been a great transition. So I'm going to turn it over to Lenny so she can introduce who she is.
Hi, Lenny Dietrich. I am currently exiting my role as the Director of Curriculum and Instruction with Seton Catholic Schools. Prior to that, I was a school leadership coach with Schools That Can Milwaukee, and I'm currently back with City Forward doing some of that work. I was a principal and I was a teacher for a long time prior to my current role and all the other things that I've done. And I'm really excited to be here and can't wait to virtually meet everyone.
So a little bit about who we are at City Forward Collective. We relaunched as a new organization last July, and we're really excited to ensure that that we're heading towards our vision of making sure that every family and every student in Milwaukee has a high quality education. And so our focus comes in 4 different pillars that we're working on that through. One being family and community organizing, the other community informed policy, effective and representative talent, and then strategic investments in quality school. My work is really focused on the 4th bucket, which is around that Quality Schools Initiative. And I'm really charged with supporting the conceptualizing a framework for what high quality looks like for Milwaukee, as well as I support leaders and educators across Milwaukee to collaborate with one another. And so we're really excited that although we're in a pandemic in this new way of life, we're still continuing with collaboratives, and they're now just virtual collaboratives. And we're excited to continue learning together. So some norms for today. I'm sure many of you have seen the norms on the left. Those are typical norms in a meeting and things that we want to continue to think about as we're sharing a space together. But the norms on the right are new to all of us in terms of having virtual norms. So again, I know I've said it a couple times, but being on video is really important so we can feel as if we're in the same space. Using the chat as much as possible. So if you have questions, or if you want to share something, or if you agree with something that someone else said, please use the chat. Use it as if we are talking to one another. Again, it's a great way to engage. Jump in with questions at any time. If someone's speaking, I ask that you either unmute yourself and we'll see that, and so that we can call on you, or just throw it in the chat box. And then mute yourself if you're not speaking, just so we don't have background noise, but make sure to unmute when you are ready to share. If there are any norms that you feel like you'd like to add to this, or you feel like are missing, again, go ahead and throw them in the chat box. So today, the objective is really to get our instructional leaders some time to talk about various strategies used by other colleagues to support teachers during this distance learning time. You'll have a chance to attend a breakout session and ask additional questions and discuss with one another in a smaller group. At the bottom, you'll see the agenda for today. I will try my best to stay on time. It is really difficult to manage time in this virtual setting, so I promise to start and end on time, but this may not be perfect in terms of what it looks like. So bear with me as we move along. But we had our welcome. We'll do a session review. Our spotlight panelists will really be the bulk of the session in terms of sharing some great things that are happening in their schools. We'll have some time in breakout rooms, and that's going to look a little different today, and I'll talk about that once it gets to that time. And then we'll have some time to come back and share out what happened in breakouts before we close and do our session survey. So I'm excited to have 3 spotlight panelists here today. They can just wave when I call their names, but they'll have time to share. Nikita's here from Carmen Northwest. She's the assistant principal, and she's going to share some ideas around student engagement and how she's supporting her teachers, specifically with engaging students in this learning. Tony Shaw is here from St. Augustine Preparatory. She's the director of student services, and she is here to talk about special education support, which I know has been a hot topic in pretty much every meeting I have sat in on. So we're really excited to have her share some strategies she's been using. And then last but not least, we have Al Keith here. He is from MCP Lloyd Campus. He's an instructional dean in math and science. And he's going to be talking about virtual coaching. And so things that I'm sure that you've done back in the school building, he's continued to do during this distance learning time, and really excited to hear what that looks like. So I want us to take a minute and just think about distance learning. When we talk about it, and the past couple of weeks have been just diving in, right? No one was really prepared for what was happening. And so I want you to take a minute to reflect on your vision for distance learning and what that vision looks like specifically as you support teachers. So let's take a minute and just jot that down on anything in front of you, and feel free to chat some out in the chat box if you're comfortable sharing. Again, would love to see some visions in the chat box. What's your vision for distance learning? Okay, so if we're not comfortable sharing yet, that's all right. Oh, here they come.
There they come. Right. Students, a lot of supported, students feel supported, and 100% of students engage.
Great. If you continue to think about your vision, we're really going to ground in that today. So again, if you don't want to write it down, feel free to just keep it near and dear to you and think about it as we're going through the sessions. Thank you for those that are coming through right now. Feel supported, engaged on financial standards, great. Students continuing to grow and receive quality instruction, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so just a reminder as we go through this, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. And so I really want us to think about this idea of control. We have gone to a few webinars by Education Elements that have had some great ideas around what this looks like in terms of locus of control. And so I want you to take a minute and look at the screen. If you cannot see it, please let me know. But I want you to start brainstorming some things that you're prioritizing right now and things that are coming up as you're making decisions. And we're going to take a minute and just categorize those things into things you can control, things you can influence, and things you cannot control or influence. So take a minute. I'm going to try and play some music for you as you read through the screen and think about those things that really are within our control and are not within our control as we're speaking about distance learning. All right, let's come back together. Is there anyone who'd like to share? Let's start with things that are in our control as we think about distance learning. When you were brainstorming those decisions and those priorities, what were some things that came up for you that are in your control? And you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Just things that we can control, Melissa?
Yes, just right now, things you can control.
I think my clarity and what our vision and what our hopes and aspirations for this time are definitely within our control.
Great, thank you for sharing that. What else is in our control?
And I think to Al's point, in line with that vision, the way that we're supporting our teachers and the rest of the school community in service of that vision is in our control.
Thanks, Nikita.
I think that one of the things that we have control over are making sure that we have expectations that are set. And another thing that we have control over is communication.
Great. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that.
Yeah, similar to what Al and Jim said on the communication and clarity front, some of those things that can be prescribed a bit more, those policies, the prescriptions for expectations, we can control that. And then in addition to writing those policies and expectations, the clarity and communication, like Jim and Al said, we can control.
Thanks, Chris. Any others?
I was just going to say that along with the communication, my head goes to trying to communicate with parents as much as possible. Obviously, we can't control the back end of that, but just kind of going, okay, how many different opportunities, how many different ways can we take advantage of to try to get in touch with them, besides just, oh, we called and then it pick up. So I think we have to personally kind of take charge of going, are we doing our best effort to get parents involved, whether they respond or not?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. All right, let's switch gears. Get it on the table. What can we not control or influence right now, even though we may want to?
The virus.
Correct, yes. What else?
Like start times, or like if we're going back to school or not, like the uncertainty that comes along with that.
Yeah, thanks, Yesenia, and that's difficult, right? I mean, something we want to be able to control, but we can't right now. Good. Anything else?
I think what's going on in students' home lives, that influences how much they can be engaged with us.
Yeah.
I think we also can't control the importance of kids seeing each other and the social gratification that they get just by seeing their friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for everyone who has kids in the house understands that right now, right? It's very difficult to see your kids not being able to interact with others. I mean, it's difficult for all of us, and then to watch little ones that social interaction is super important. So yeah, it's hard. All right, I appreciate you all sharing and want you to keep this in mind today as we're going through this, but also every day, because I know we wake up wanting to do so much and prioritize so many things, but let's remember we can't control everything, unfortunately. But what we're doing, as we've talked about in previous sessions, wherever you're at in this journey is the right space, and we'll figure it out together. So moving right along, I just wanted to put up this slide briefly because I'm sure many of you have heard these two terms more and more every single day, thinking about synchronous and asynchronous learning and what that looks like for students. And so as we're going through different strategies that are being used, I want us to think about which buckets these fall into and how we're supporting our teachers in both buckets to ensure that we're giving our students different opportunities. So you can take a quick minute to look at that. And I will share these slides with you after this session. So just so you know, they will be coming to you. And then the last piece before we get into our spotlights is again from Ed Elements. They have wonderful webinars, like I said, and some things that we take from them that we find to be really important is this thought about new school learning cycle and these buckets that we're living out of as we support our students in distance learning. And so I want you to take a minute and look at each bucket and let us know what's resonating with you. Where do you feel like you're really supporting teachers with distance learning, and which bucket are we working out of that's been really successful? So go ahead and take a minute to think about that, and feel free to chat it in the group chat. What's resonating with you? What bucket do you feel like has been successful for you? Thanks, Tony. Systems and instruction. Thanks, Chris. Love to see that you have a strong process for communicating with families. I know that's been difficult for everybody. Thanks, Al. You've been rocking the culture bucket. Love to hear it. I'm sure you'll share a little bit of that when you have your spotlight as well. Sheba, that's great. Supporting with weekly tech support. It's definitely a space that we all need to build our capacity on for sure. All right, so again, if you have things that are resonating with you, please feel free to put them in the chat box. But I think you've heard me talk enough, and it's time to turn over to our spotlights. And so I like to just share some things that are happening on my end so that you know when I say that we're working through technology, we are always learning. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Nikita can share hers and the great information that she has coming your way. If there's any issues, we will let you know, but bear with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Nikita.
Strong start.
Okay.
I was saying I have a presentation that I am going to try to share, and it's mainly to keep me on track, but it's also links and documents and stuff in there, so I'll share it out on the chat when I'm done, and if anyone wants to take the documents, feel free. Okay. Everyone can see my screen? Okay, I'm going to try to present it. Okay. So I kept this photo on for the first slide because I think that's really what we were all talking earlier, which is how do we really look out for our students in multiple ways? Like one, to be okay during this huge event that just took place in their young lives, but then also how do we make sure that we're not increasing gaps that may already exist and preparing them as much as they can for when they do come back to us, hopefully the fall. So a few things that we decided as a network, just in like the big planning phase right now, was our grading policy and then how we were communicating with families. So in terms of grading, our Q3, we ended our Q3 when all of this started. So March 16th, we ended Q3 and just moved into a fresh quarter. We're grading our Q3 and our Q4 as a pass or an incomplete. Students, instead of getting regular assignment grades, they're getting a weekly score of a 1 to a 3, and that's based primarily on their engagement. So they are obviously completing assignments, but part of that grade is also, did you interact with your teacher during office hours? Did you send an email? Did you reach out in some way? So you can see the scale for the weekly grade there. One is that needs support bucket, the students that we wanted to identify that right away next year they might need some additional support in terms of intervention, in terms of summer school, depending on what that looks like. So those are the students who completed less than 50% of the work for the week. And then 2 is moderate, so anything that you would give between a 50 to an 80% to, that would be a 2. And then a 3 is students who are consistently engaging, so they would have an overall score of about an 80. So what that looks like in terms of actual Power School, teachers enter that weekly grade from 1 to 3, and then when they're entering a grade, they put in the comment section any missing assignments from one thing kids are getting off track with when they are turning in assignments, often that are turned in too late. So when teachers are putting in assignments into Power School, it helps to put in the comments what's missing. So if students follow up about what do I need to change that grade, it's right there for them. In terms of communication, so we were lucky in this way that we had already had this system set up from the beginning of the year, but we sent out a weekly, let's see if this is a link. Okay. We sent out a weekly email to our families every Monday morning at around 7:30. So 7:30 is when teachers post to their Google Classroom and when we send out this email to families. So the email has just general Carmen updates for the week, any changes in grading, and I always like to include just like fun websites that kids can go on. And I like this is the part where we have to remember they're also 11 and probably don't be on the computer just doing schoolwork for however many hours a day. So we try to include some like fun things they can do as well. Teachers write down when their office hours are, their Google Classroom codes in case we still do have some kids several weeks later who have not logged into Google Classroom, so we keep the codes up. And then just the homework for each day. So these get sent out every Monday to parents and to the listserv of all of our students. We've noticed that sending it to students as well as parents is helpful. Sometimes kids get to their emails before parents do. The rest of the communication that we have goes primarily through advisors. So we've set the expectation with advisors that to reach out to families twice per week, to their attendees once per week. To be honest, we've had a lot more success talking to parents than we have kids. And I think that depends on like the grade level that you're working with. A lot of, again, our 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds feel a little weird talking to their teachers. So they prefer that their parents do it. And what we've kind of normed on as we've gone on is as long as we know the kid is okay, as long as we've had some communication, we're not like gonna stick so strongly to this 2 times a week with family, 1 time a week with students. Are kids okay? Are they completing work? That's really the measures that we're looking at. That said, these are the 2 priorities. Once we've like figured out those big buckets, these are the 2 priorities in terms of instruction that we're really focusing on. One is the engagement, which we measure through work completion. And then how are we interacting with students? How many opportunities do we have to interact with our kids? So in terms of work completion, we are pushing to new learning. We are looking at the grade level standards and pushing ahead. We're not using our curriculum anymore, but we are using the standards of the curriculum. And what we found works best, and this has been a bit of touch and go, is we've found the most success when we're using platforms that kids are familiar with. So Alex, Achieve, anything that they've done throughout the year, they've continued to do during distance learning because they haven't had to figure it out. We've also switched our science and math curriculum. We were using Canna Science and Eureka Math in school. We switched both of those to using CK12. I'm a huge fan of CK12, and if anyone is looking for like just a vetted program that does your grading for you, that's easy to get through, that it's interactive for kids, it gives them multiple ways to practice, and it's now free. We really love CK12, so almost all of our science and math classes are now using it. Some math teachers are using Edpuzzle, they're supplementing with Alex, but pretty much everyone is using it as their base. We moved social studies to Common Lit, which kids are also enjoying. If anyone uses Achieve 3000, our kids seem to prefer Common Lit over Achieve 3000, and they're able to access it pretty easily. We've had pretty high levels of completion for Common Lit. We've also found it just to simplify and really about what is most important for kids to be doing right now, which for us in a lot of subjects is just reading. Like, are they reading grade level material? Do they have time with text every day? And what that's turned into for our ELA classes is we kind of scrapped the book that we were going to be doing in the classes according to our curriculum, and we selected a high interest novel. Match Fish Tank is an awesome curriculum out of Boston. I see Lenny nodding. She's the one who told me about this, so thank you, Lenny. And we took their curriculum. It's open source. They have all the materials online, including the novels. So our 6th graders are reading The Outsiders right now, and they're loving it. They're getting to have some time to discuss it, make some real life connections, and really having fun with it. But what that took was us taking everything that was in a regular curriculum and really thinking about what are the most high leverage activities that kids can be doing. And for us, that was time with text and then time to discuss questions that came up with the text. Did anyone have any questions? I don't want to just ramble during this.
Okay. You're good, Nikita, don't worry. You're good. If you have them in the chat box, and then also during our breakouts, we'll have some space for additional questions. Yep.
Okay. And then in terms of our interaction with students, Melissa, thank you for putting up the synchronous and asynchronous learning. We have tried both, and we continue to try both. To be honest, we're having more success with asynchronous. We found it tough to tell kids sit down for office hours for this hour every day and be at your computer. We haven't had too much success with that. We've had some kids and some kids really enjoy it, but what we're doing now is we're recording those office hour sessions and having a team host that recording to their Google Classroom. So kids have the option of come listen to this lesson with me during office hours and let's go through it together. Or if you can't make it, then make sure to watch this video of us doing the lessons together and either answer some questions about the lesson or comment under the video video when you finish, so we can that you watched that lesson happen. And that, you know, that's helped lessen the number of questions that teachers are getting at all hours of the day and night. Like, did you watch the video? Once you watched that, you told me you watched that, now I'll answer your questions. Each teacher has office hours for 1 hour a day. We found that later office hours work better, so the 11 a.m.s are not frequently attended, but the 4 p.m.s are much more attended. So again, during that time, that's our push right now, is for teachers to be a bit more strategic in their office hours and actually make it a lesson, instead of kids just coming with questions, and frame it for kids like, you sit with me for these 30 minutes or this hour, and you can put a check by that lesson for the day and just turn it in. So we can do this together. We also have teachers who post videos. A lot of those are introductions for the week, talking to kids about, this is your assignment, this is what's expected at the end of the week. That's linked, so I'll watch that video after. I'll send it. The picture on the right, this is what we'll often get, like kids showing up as pandas or kids wanting to like watch a video. You get like a lot of weird stuff on these office hours too, but I think that's the part of attending to like middle schoolers or whatever age group, and just giving them that opportunity to be kids and interact with their teachers. Like I said, we post everything through Google Classroom. Everyone has a Google Classroom that they use. Kids are all logged in to the Google Classroom, except our 7th grade, who decided to make a week. So if anyone wants to learn how to make a Weebly, that's what they did, which is working for them. So you can also check that it's in this looks super overwhelming, but it's working. You can check that out after this. And then last thing is my role in the oversee the instruction for the 6th through 8th grade. And this is how my time kind of falls during the week, which is also a work in progress. But I do send out that family communication, like I said, every Monday morning at 7:30. Teachers have had to fill it out by the Friday previous. I do content team meetings with each of my content teams. So that's like a lot of the day on Monday and Tuesday. They're there for 45 minutes to an hour. This is the protocol we've been using recently, and I've really enjoyed it. It's the problem of practice protocol. So a teacher will bring a problem and we'll all talk through it together and give some suggestions as a group. I like this because I'm still learning what this all looks like as well. And teachers have taught me a lot during this process of what's working for them and how then I can talk to other teachers about it. So I would highly recommend this. I'm enjoying it. But that's what happens during content meetings. I have planning meetings. Usually I coach 12 teachers during the school year. It's really not feasible to do it in the same way online, although Al, I'm excited to hear your part about coaching teachers. Who I've really prioritized right now is our first year teachers and any teachers who throughout the year really struggled with planning, because if they struggled during the year, they're probably struggling now. Make sure to have one-on-ones with those teachers every week. We do a staff huddle. That's just part of trying to keep the same routine that we had during the school year. We do a staff meeting once a week, and that's very heavy on shout outs, appreciations for teachers and all the work that they're doing. We've started to think about next year planning, so that's what's happening in leadership meetings if anyone wants to talk about that later. And then finally, wait, I skipped something. That visual about bucket fillers, I just wanted to touch on that. I think in the same way that we're asking teachers to attend to a lot of students like emotional needs right now, make sure that they're okay before you worry about their schoolwork. That's something like we have to do with teachers as well. Teachers' worlds have turned upside down in the same as all of ours have. So I feel like a lot more of my time now is spent bucket filling than it probably was during the school year, just checking in. These are the challenges that we're still working with. Curious to hear other people's next steps or challenges around as well. Continuing to grow our engagement numbers. We are not at 100%. I would say we're at about 70 on the high range, honestly. We're working to improve that. Chromebooks are a constant work in progress. We were able to give out Chromebooks, but as they break, trying to make sure kids have working Chromebooks. Communication strategies that work for all families, and then what to do about the students who are not completing any work. And we do still have students who aren't doing any work right now, so how to really identify those and give them the supports that they need.
Thanks, Nikita, for sharing. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, please make sure you're putting them in the chat box. And we, like I said, we will be able to ask additional questions in our breakout rooms. And I'm going to switch back over to my screen. Let's see. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this now. All right, can I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen now? Anyone? Okay, perfect. All right, but this, okay. Sorry, guys. As you can see, this is not Nikita, what Nikita just shared. This is Tony.
I'm done.
Sorry, something got messed up with my show, and Lenny and I were when we were going over it beforehand, I had some things missing. So apologize for that, but we are going to move on to Tony Shaw. So she is here from St. Augustine Prep. She's the Director of Student Services, and she's going to share a little bit with us about special education support. And so I will turn it over to Tony. And again, any questions that are coming up as our spotlight presenters are sharing, please feel free to throw them in the chat box, and we'll have time for those questions once we go into our breakout rooms. It's all yours, Tony.
No problem. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much, and thank you for this opportunity. So as I begin, I'm just talking so I can pull my screen up to share my screen. I don't know. Can you all see it now? Hello?
No, not yet.
Not yet, Tony.
Not
no.
yet? No. Oh, no. Still no?
Still no.
Okay. Melissa, you may have to do
Yeah,
it.
I'll pull it up for you, Tony. Not a problem.
Thank you.
And I will pull it up.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Like we said, we are honest about technology when it doesn't
I
work.
know. When it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Okay.
Okay, can you guys see that now? You see it? Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So it's always
You are welcome.
and A, B, C, and D, as we can see. So in thinking about special education, when the whole this whole situation transpired, so my thought immediately went to the special education students, those students who are already at a disadvantage, and I began to think about support and engagement for both in both of those lenses to ensure that those students have still what they need, but away from where they normally get it from. So with student support, you know, and just thinking about all the many emails and messages from DPI, is still trying to make sure that those students have daily interactions, right? That we still think about FAPE and making sure that they have access to the gen ed instruction. And that can be, you know, even during this distance learning time, and whether it's direct instruction, whether it's related services, whether it's modifications and accommodations. And so our platform that we use at Aug Prep for the middle and high school is this platform called Schoology. Elementary uses Seesaw, and I think they also use Google Classroom, if I'm not mistaken. Now, these are familiar tools that as our students use these every day anyway. So we were ahead of the curve in that sense because it is familiar. The students were familiar with this particular platform. As far as our operations and looking at attendance and the participation of it, assignments, all of that going into place. So we just really strategically laid out the expectations for a student's attendance for the special ed needs. So we paired a special ed teacher with every, was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with each advisory where those special education students are housed anyway. So then that's a familiar, that's their case manager. That's a familiar person. That's one that's gonna track those students from that angle also. So from that, when those special education teachers, they have a certain time they need to sign in by before they're marked tardy or absent. Once that attendance goes in, the special education teacher then reaches out to those parents and say, hey, look, Tony is not here. What, you know, is it anything going on that we should know about? So we're on it right away. And once it become a frequent flyer or a habitual person who's constantly late or absent, then we have a family coordinator person, and then even our assistant principal steps in and make those phone calls as well. Likewise with the missing assignments, after 3 assignments, we're reaching out to those parents as well. So our systems is down packed. Well, we really try to run a tight system so as little as possible slips through without us knowing about it. Documentation on the SPED side, I try to support the teachers in, I like it triangular. So if you make a phone call, document it, send a follow-up email, then also what we use Infinite Campus for documentation as well. And then just so we can make sure we have it in several places saying that we did contact, and we always do a date and time and the mode of contact so we can say we did speak to someone. The grade level, the teachers, SPED teachers do meet with gen ed teachers as their grade level meetings. They also meet with me weekly as check-ins, and we check in on lessons. They also have office hours for their students, as well as the families to check in. And those are staggered simply because we do still have some parents who are working and everybody can't be at home on the top end of the day, but a lot of them are on the bottom end of the day. So the teachers did a really, really nice job structuring and staggering those hours so they can still try to meet the needs of those parents and those students. In addition to that, as far as our culture, we do have SEL support and lessons that are going out. We also have direct instruction lessons from SPED teachers going out to those students as well. And even our specials are reaching out to those parents as well. And so we can kind of address whatever needs. And right now, you know, the physical as well as the mental well-being is very important. And so we want to make sure that those things we're in contact with those parents and those families to make sure that we're servicing and doing the very best we can with what we have in order to ensure that they are successful academically as well as emotionally and physically as well. Instruction wise, we're more so on the maintenance side of things. We had completed 3 quarters. So instead of trying to teach new skills and new concepts, we figured to get the best bang for our buck, let's go back, reteach, and go deeper with some of the skills and strategies that we've already covered over the year, and to ensure that we're gonna meet those IEP goals. So that has kind of been the focus. And in order to do that, I took it, personally went through and audited every IEP, and at all prep we call them PLP, personalized learning plans. So went through and audited to kind of see exactly where every goal was, where the student was, and if we can possibly meet that goal outside of prep building. Out of over 100 files, less than 3 we had to end date. So that means that I could not meet that goal. So simply like a couple of them was peer interaction. Well, we can't do that because of the social distancing. So we had to end date it, but we rewrote the goal trying to target a specific skill that they were looking for within that goal. And so that has been very good. And so then once I did it, then the SPED teacher went back and looked through it to see as well. And I think at this time, it has really pushed us and forced us out of creativity into innovation, because now we're looking for a new way and we're going above beyond. And I think you can, and I think they work in together, but not necessarily interchangeably, if that makes sense. I think we can be creative in order, we need creativity to be innovative. And so that's kind of was a focal point, like how can we meet, and let's think outside of the box, because at this point the box isn't big enough. So let's think beyond this particular point to make sure that these students get what they need to be successful. Schoology is like I said, it's a familiar tool, it's a familiar platform, because that's what we use on a daily basis. It is user-friendly. The teachers can pre-record lessons, upload those lessons, students can respond. They do grades and they do breakout rooms, so it is very user-friendly. I think another plus that Prep had is the one-to-one technology. You know, so that was all, we're ahead again on that level because of that. So the challenges, the lack of student motivation. You know, we can sit and try to check in with those students all day, but you know, at this point, I think a number of them have cabin fever, if you will. And so it's just like, you know what, I'm done. And just still trying to push, and we still try to hold grades over their heads. And we're saying, you know what, this is gonna count. So I need you to be here and present as much as possible so that you can get what you need. We've had to help some families dealing with like hotspots or Wi-Fi issues who didn't have that. So reaching out to our tech team to ensure that those families have access to Wi-Fi so that their students can get on and those students can access that instruction. And also supporting families beyond academics. You know, again, I've alluded to not only the physical well-being, but the mental well-being, because this is just a trying time for everybody, you know, and want to make sure that our families are just healthy mentally as well. And so that's where the student support services, our therapists are chiming in, giving lessons and resources, trying to support those students as well. And I think, again, it goes all the way back to just keeping our students at the forefront, at the center of this whole thing, and designing learning that's going to be both equitable and accessible for those particular students. And then the thing is finding the sweet spot to make sure those two jive well together. And so that's why I think we have done a really, really nice job balancing the systems and the instruction together. One thing that I did not want to do, not that I was afraid to do it, but I just really didn't want to do compensatory services at the end of the year. So our thing was to let's be specific, intentional, and consistent in making sure that we're able to meet these student goals for this IEP or this PLP so that we don't have to deal with that on the back end of things. So I'm not sure if anybody have any questions or, okay, I know it went fast, I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will talk about them when we do our breakout session. So thank you so much, Tony, for sharing. I updated your name on our slides, so that looks correct. I'm going to turn it over to Al. He's going to share about how he's coaching virtually. And then after that, we're going to jump into some breakouts. So turn it over to you, Al.
Great. Hey, everyone. I'm going to try sharing my screen here and hopefully it works. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Perfect. Awesome. I want to definitely get into instructional coaching. But I want to just, obviously go through the same discussion points that everyone else has. And again, any questions, feel free to park them in the chat box or reserve them for the breakout. So I think, I talked a little bit about this earlier, and I think one of the biggest levers that leaders can push on right now is providing a sense of clarity to staff, to scholars, to families. And this is just a diagram that our campus has come up with in a recent couple of weeks to just kind of outline our priorities as a campus. And again, I don't want to dig too deep into this right now, but 3 priorities that we have as a campus is ensuring that there is student and family well-being and welfare, educational access is provided, and obviously looking at academic quality from that point on. And you'll see that a lot of the coaching and leadership actions and things that I've put in place fall into these buckets. So when we look at learning platforms, primary and early elementary largely work via Flipgrid and work packets that were created before leaving our school building. And they focus solely on math and ELA during those times. Upper elementary and middle school use Google Classrooms and Flipgrid. Elementary, again, similar to primary and early elementary, focus on math and ELA. And middle school, focus on math, ELA, science, and social studies, which can all look a little different, obviously, based on the grade level. But those are the platforms that they use there. From an operations standpoint, we have obviously a combination of asynchronous and synchronous learning. Similar to some of the things that were shared before, we're definitely seeing a much larger turnout for the asynchronous, when students are able to, flexibly access learning on their own schedule, and not only just their schedule, but the schedule that works for their families, when technology may be available or resources are available for their support. We see a much bigger turnout there, but we also have some synchronous learning taking place, and we're starting to see that a lot of our teachers are moving toward a place where they're comfortable leading and facilitating synchronous learning via Google Meets, Screencastify, et cetera, many resources there. We measure student engagement similar to as if we would measure attendance on a daily basis, but usually we track it weekly. And I think every grade level in our campus has a slightly different model, but essentially they're recording the exact same data of what students are engaged, meaning they're on the bus with us, they're participating, they're completing tasks, and what scholars aren't. And we do this in a way, and we try to ensure that this is done in a way that drives action. So, I mean, it's one thing to obviously record who's doing things and who's not, but we want to make sure that, once we have that data of who's engaged, who's not, what are we doing about it? So what you'll see here on the right-hand side is just a sample of our third grade's engagement log. And again, similar to what Nikita showed earlier, they use a certain percentage to gauge, how many assignments put them on the actively engaged tier, how many put them on the inconsistently engaged tier, and how many are in the not engaged tier. And those scholars who land in those inconsistent and not engaged tiers, they reach out or devise action steps at our weekly grade level team meetings. Some staff members choose to reach out primarily to scholars who they may have a stronger or better relationship with, and try to leverage that relationship in driving student outcomes. But again, we make sure that there's some type of action that takes place, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a check-in with parents, or whatever it may be. My 8th grade, I want to share their sample, which I think is a really interesting model that they've gone to. And I want to make sure that this is all presented in the right way. Can you guys see where this switched over? Cool. So what they've actually done is they've actually split this up into advisory groups amongst the entire grade level, where they've taken essentially all 50-ish scholars, and each staff member on that grade level team is responsible for contacting their pack or their pride of scholars that they have. And again, they use a certain level of completed activities to gauge engagement and completion there as well. And again, they take responsibility on reaching out to those families, reaching out to those scholars, and ensuring that those scholars are remaining engaged with us. Cool. Is this back on the slideshow? Great. So again, we're just this week actually as a network just shifted into network-wide grading practices, and that's largely based on completion right now. And I'll talk a little bit more about where we're heading with that and what our vision is and what are some of our philosophies on grading are a little bit later. Regarding resources, our social work team has been, just like amazing rock stars, through all of this. In the sense that they have ensured that whatever resources we need to provide to families, that we have, if we don't have that exact resource, that we at least know where to find it, or they point us in the right direction with providing those things. So tapping into them on a regular basis has been key. A member from our leadership team usually meets with that team once a week to pass along scholars of concern, families of concern, or whatever resources may be needed based on grade level with those professionals. And then obviously when we look at planning and learning time, I want to say 2 weeks into this endeavor, the network outlined that teachers, to try to help them find a balance between obviously their home life and work life, which has all been kind of combined into one, that teachers are typically expected to work no more than 3 hours a day. And that includes, whatever planning they may need to prepare for the next day. Office hours, the synchronous learning, Google Meets and Hangouts, all of that is included during that time. But obviously, oftentimes we hear and see that teachers are largely working outside of that as need be. And, again, just from my personal experiences, I feel like a lot of teachers are constantly on the phone with families, talking to kids, working with kids all day. So just looking at culture, a couple of things that I think that we as a network and specifically our campus are really, really doing well, are providing some sense of normalcy and well-being. So we've prioritized, and a lot of the reading that I've done in this time has prioritized, trying to keep things as normal as possible during this time. So we try to ensure that there's weekly contact with every scholar. We want to increase parent communication, which is very key during this time. And our 8th grade, and actually a few of our grade level teams are actually planning on having some virtual open houses coming up to invite parents into their virtual learning spaces, talk about student expectations, talk about, the daily or weekly schedules for those classes, and just kind of outline the remainder of the year. I'll share this out with you, but here is just a YouTube link to one of the assemblies that we hold weekly, which are really cool, really give families and staff and kids a great opportunity to interact with each other, which, I think is the biggest loss during this time, is they don't have that opportunity to do any of that. So we give them a chance to do that through some pretty funny things, pretty fun things. And again, that link will be available for you guys to check out when best. Regarding instruction, we wanted to establish some really clear floor expectations. Math and ELA are expected to provide 3 lessons per week, with a 4th day reserved for the independent learning, meaning News ELA, Alex, Zern. Those things are to be completed on that 4th day. And again, that 5th day is more of a flex day, which is provided for scholars to either catch up or potentially maybe even get a head start, depending on what their needs or circumstances are. In conjunction with their grade level team and their teacher, they can work that out. But again, given that flex day, we found is very important. The instructional focus is, rooted in educational equity. And this is one of the things I talk to my teachers about in our one-on-one meetings, is that, we are very aware that our scholars are facing some hardships right now that prevent or, potentially make learning challenging. And we want to ensure that our scholars have every educational opportunity that they deserve during this time. Included in that is coaching and teacher development. And again, I'll get more in depth with that during our breakout session, but I've prioritized that in a data approached way or a data focused way to ensure that our teachers are not only, being the best they can for scholars, but to ensure that we're providing the development they need and support that they need as well. Our instructional purpose right away during this time was maintenance. We wanted to if possible, ease some of the shock that, shifting an entire brick and mortar school onto an online learning format may have for scholars and families. So rather than, throw everything into an online format and have them engage in new content, new learning, new skills, we focused on maintaining skills that were currently being taught, maybe even some review skills that needed to be retaught, while students and families were becoming more acclimated to the new online platform of Google Classrooms, Flipgrid, whatever the grade levels were using at that time. And again, that's all done with an equity focus. Some of the things I want to make sure that I touch on quickly before I go too far in depth in our breakout is regarding instructional coaching. I communicated to my teachers that I want to make sure that I'm providing clarity in this journey and that this is something that's entirely new for all of us. I had no idea what instructional coaching or being an academic dean looked like during this time of online learning. So I had to do a lot of, digging and research on my own to figure out how to best support. But again, I wanted to make sure that everything that we do for the remainder of the year is rooted in our brick and mortar practices, the things that we've done since day one. So again, sharing clarity in our vision as a school and making sure that I clarified our golden circle, which what's his name? Simon Sinek, I think developed, essentially just making sure that everyone's on the same page of our why, our how, and our what as a grade level team, as a content team and as a school. Virtual observations took place, and again, I'll be going more in depth with those later and those tools, and also just tiered priorities for teachers during this time too. And obviously we want to make sure that they are, number one, reaching out to families, reaching out to kids, and establish that communication and that connection. Then we can start to focus on, engagement and completion regarding academics, and then build into accuracy and rigor as well. But we do understand that during this time, lots of families and lots of kids may be in different places and fall in different buckets there. So we don't want to make the misstep of, forcing one teacher or one family or one kid into one bucket that they may not be best suited for at that moment. Regarding successes and challenges, I think our biggest success is just staff buy-in and engagement. We've seen in, various grade levels and various places within our building, engagement is super high. Like that, if you saw on that previous slide, the third grade team saw close to 90% of engagement in the past week. And that again is just a product of their just constant, relentless contact that they have with families and parents. I mean, my phone is even right now going off from that grade level team because they just text all the time. And they're talking about, what kids need, what can we do for this kid today? It's really awesome to see your staff that engaged and bought in, which again translates to the kids. Challenges, I think, are flexibility and balance. And with MCP being, I think, and I've only been there, this is my 4th year, but a largely systematic organization. It can be difficult for us as a network to move in a way that provides flexibility and balance of all being on the same page and providing this systematic appearance, but also respecting what teachers are doing in their classrooms and grade level teams are doing and have been doing and seeing successes with. So I think that's been our successes and our challenges as a network. And again, questions, comments, concerns, obviously, we can dig in a little deeper in the breakout session.
Thank you, Al. I really, really appreciate it. If we could just take a minute to give everybody that shared out a big round of applause. I know it's not easy sharing everything that's going on as we're all trying to navigate through this, and you don't know if you have the right answers, but as we said, where you're at right now in this journey is the right place, and we're all figuring it out. Okay, so moving on to wanting to learn more. This is where you get to choose your journey, choose your lane, and bear with me as we set up these breakout rooms. But what I'm gonna ask for you to do is if you right click on your picture, you have an option to rename yourself. So all I'm asking is that you put a 1, 2, or 3 in front of your name, depending on where you would like to go in the breakout session. So 1, you will be with Nikita, continuing to discuss student engagement. 2, you will be with Tony, continuing the conversation around special education supports. And 3, you'll be with Al, talking more about virtual coaching. And so again, if you could right click on your name, add a 1, 2, or 3 before your name, I will go ahead and put you in the correct breakout session. Just so you know, Lenny will be in one of the rooms and I will be supporting the other 2 rooms. So you may see me popping in and out. That's not because I'm disengaged, it's just because I want to check in on both rooms. We're going to be in these breakout rooms for about 20 minutes. And you'll have some time to, again, hear some more from our spotlight candidates, ask some questions, and then work through a 3-2-1. So Lenny's going to explain that a little bit more, and then I'm going to go ahead and put you in breakouts. If you're having any issues renaming yourself, you can just stay in this main room afterwards, and I will place you in the correct room. So Lenny, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about breakouts, and I will set up the rooms.
Yep. So before I do that, and while Melissa's working through, I just wanted to bring us back to your hopes for your students that everyone posted in the chat box in the beginning, and then the things that resonated that aligned to those trends that we saw was, throughout all 3 presenters, what we saw was, we really, keeping a comfort level for families and for students, which was loud and clear in the hopes that were in the chat box, as well as this idea of keeping kids connected to their teachers and connected to each other in this virtual format, as well as supporting kids not only academically, but emotionally. So those things were, as I was listening, I was taking notes and then taking them back to the hopes. So it's great to see that what we learned today are tied to the hopes that we had for students. As we go into the breakout groups, we're going to spend about 20 minutes in the group. And so what we'll do is spend about 10 minutes getting clarity on any questions that you had, or just questions for the group in the area that you selected. And then we'll spend about 10 minutes in the breakout session as well, trying to come together on 3 challenges or 3 questions that remain, 2 solutions that you saw today, and 1 hope for the future. And so as the groups come back together, we're going to ask for a share out on one or two of those last pieces.